evening and welcome to the Milford School Committee meeting of September 18th, Thursday evening. Tonight's meeting is being broadcast through the local media outlets present. If anyone would like to rebroadcast, please contact a member of the school committee or the administration. Before we start, I'd like to have a moment of silence for two Milford people that passed away this week. One of them being David Morganelli, Milford fella, product of the Milford Public Schools, member of the Milford Finance Committee. His wife, Dr. Morganelli, is the school psychiatrist. His father-in-law, Dr. Carl DiGregorio, a former school committee member himself. And a longtime crossing guard, Mary Ann Wood. I don't know how many years, but we were saying it had been well over 30.
She's a career crossing guard.
Yeah, so it's kind of a sad week for the Milford Public Schools. So from the Milford School Committee and the administration, I'd like to offer a moment of silence, please. And with that, the first item on the agenda, approval of minutes. Has every member had the opportunity to read the minutes? Can I have a motion? Motion from Don, second from Patrick, all in favor? Next item agenda is invitation to speak. Is anybody here to invitation to speak? Sure. Could you come forward right over to that table? Thank you.
My name is Beth Ronfelter, and I am a parent just concerned with the notification that came home in regards to the taking away of the morning recess for the students K through second grade. I'm trying to understand the choice as to why it was taken away. In every study I've read about, it's very beneficial for the kids. And what prompted this change? What was the basis for it? Was there like some kind of academic study as to kids that in that age group that should be staying indoors for a 15-minute break? And then according to this letter that came home today, it says that they still get a recess. It's indoors, 15 minutes. That to me doesn't give them the opportunity to get out, run around, what they need to do in this age group. And I just don't understand, if it's indoors, what's the difference if they take however long just to line up and go outdoors? So, and I have a lot of other points I'd like to speak to that, but at first I want to try to understand why this change has happened this year.
Mr. Chairman, we're happy to comment on that. The typical form for invitation to speak is
Oh.
The committee would just hear that. But certainly, if you want to continue the points.
Okay.
And
Yeah, make it
Then
Dr. McIntyre and I are happy to make some
Okay.
clarifications.
Okay.
But this is just the Robert's Rules of Order that we
No,
follow.
right, that's
Okay.
fine. This
But
is
yeah,
my
but by
first
all-
time, so I appreciate it.
By all means, continue, please.
Understood.
And I saw something that this was, I believe, discussed among the school committee members in the spring. And I was just wondering if there was a vote, if there was input as far as from faculty members, teachers, any other opinions, or how do these things just get brought up and get mandated as a new change in the policy? And if the faculty members' opinions are considered. The other thing I was reading up on in regards to, I understand that kindergarten has implemented the gold standard, gold teaching strategies, which is for the state goal for teaching this age group, kindergarten age group. And I understand with that it's aligned with development of appropriate practices. And part of that, from what I understand, is that the kids need to be observed as far as in a social setting, in play, and I don't understand how you could do that as far as an indoor recess, when they really can't move around and, sort of be themselves, because they're limited in space and in other children. in the same setting that they've been in all day. The other thing is, so this means that these kids, they get on the bus, so they're basically in a classroom setting from 8:25, and I know for Brookside, where my kids attend, till 12:15. And then they get a 15-minute break within 4 hours, and that break is still within a classroom setting. I mean, as far as the health reasons alone, I don't understand this change. I can't imagine it's beneficial for these kids. Just running around, exercise, fresh air, vitamin D, and I was reading some of the CDC information on this, and they said everything about a recess is beneficial for these kids. So again, those are most of my points. And then there was also, as far as the communication of these changes, from last year to this year, these are some big changes that no parent was notified of. I would think it would warrant a letter home in the mail before the start of the school year, which I found out randomly because I was checking on my son, who is in kindergarten, who's having a hard time adjusting. And, I was informed then that the structure has changed. And had I known before, maybe we could have prepared even my first grader, as far as, or my son, my kindergartner, you can't have naps. I could have taken him off of nap times, got him prepared to be in a full day, a structured environment that he's now going into. Because, from preschool to kindergarten, it's a big adjustment for them. And so that was another issue I had in regards to that, especially where if it was brought up in the spring. And then it just was very odd, too, that there were two different, from what I understood, there were two different practices as far as recess from Brookside to Memorial. Memorial was still having outdoor recess, and Brookside was not. And then lastly, and I know that rest time was taken away in kindergarten as well, which wasn't even brought up in this note, which is something, too, that I think warrants being brought to the parents' attention. I mean, this is something we can work with our kids, prep them for, help them understand, because it's hard. Like I said, my son's having trouble transitioning from preschool to kindergarten, and I want to help him as much as I can, but when all of a sudden these changes come, and I'm not even aware of it now, from last year to this year, my son was in kindergarten last year. These are all new changes to me, and I didn't even know about it. So that was just quite upsetting because I've never had a problem. I was, when my son started at Brookside, I was very impressed with the whole organization of it, and he loved it. The environment, I just was really impressed with it. And then this was just sort of, very disappointing for me. So those are my basic concerns, and I'm not sure if there's anything that we can do as parents, because I know there's a number of others that voiced their concerns as far as this change, to change it back and how I would go about doing that, but I just wanted to get that on the record, I guess, that, I'm really concerned as far as, basically the health of the kids and the learning. So.
Well, first, I'd like to say thank you for coming in this evening, but I'd like, even if you would, to give the superintendent an opportunity at a later date, because you had quite a few concerns there, to look into them and respond back to you, I think is the proper way to handle it.
Definitely.
But I want to say thank you very much for bringing those to our attention.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. How's everybody?
I am well, thank you.
I'm Cheryl Perotti. I'm one of the kindergarten teachers at Brookside School.
And I'm Deborah Johnson, who was everything before coming again to kindergarten, K through 4, ELL, Spanish program.
And I am Lauren Woodbury, and I am a kindergarten teacher at Memorial.
And we are here as well to speak on behalf of our 5 and 6 year olds that are attending kindergarten this year. As our parents spoke, finding out, we also found out day one of school that there will be no morning recess. And it was upsetting, and because these are little kids who need to get out. They ask every day, are we going out? I did take them out the first couple days of school, and I got reprimanded the third day not to take them out. So they have been asking why we can't take the kids out. And I said, well, we'll have to wait and see. So it's upsetting because I have been teaching for a long time. And yeah, there are studies out there why recess is beneficial. And the reason why it's getting taken down, because the academics are getting pushed down to kindergarten level. And the demands are getting more and more because of the Common Core. It's not developmentally appropriate. And I look at it, time on learning. Well, my kids reach the benchmarks at the end of the year where they're supposed to be. So why are we putting more time on learning when they're reaching their goals? They're reaching those goals because that they're getting the chance to develop socially, and up to this point, and the structure of the classroom was working. And now I'm finding, yeah, it's only a week and a half of kindergarten. The behaviors, we see an increase in behaviors in the winter when they're indoors. We have to change our behavior structure to accommodate those behaviors until they can get out and release them. Look at our PBIS plan. Those pink slips get written up more and more come those winter months when we're inside. And like the parent said, health reasons. These kids are inside all the time as it is with their video games. The obesity rate is up, the health reasons and concerns. So, and as well as the new teaching assessment gold. And we are focusing on 2 areas this year, social and cognitive. And one way to do that, one way to get that data in there, it's a lot of data to be noted, and the evidence has to be proven, whether it's with pictures or just anecdotal records. But when you don't have that social piece, whether it's recess or indoor play, to observe that, I mean, you need to build that foundation first so that their brain can function and learn the academics that are put out there. I mean, I don't know if you all agree, but
Absolutely.
those are those A's and B's before you can get to the C's. And now they're taken away. And there's studies out there more and more about the effects this recess is having on being taken away in these school systems. But there's not too much that I came across that shows that MCAS tests or any of these other tests that are being put on these children, that the scores have gone up because 15 minutes of recess has been taken away. There's more mental health issues of these little kids because they're stressing out that they have to come to kindergarten and know how to get to where they have to be. And some of these kids, and I have a few this year, have not been exposed to 1 iota of preschool or anything academic. But I get them from that 0 to where they need to be at the end of the year. So I don't know, I feel like I'm being slapped on the hand for something that I'm doing wrong, and now I gotta add more time on my learning.
And I'd like to add that kindergarten is the new first grade. And I also feel that we work very hard. I've taught K through 4. I've been in those classrooms. I've been a K through 4 teacher. I will tell you, I would never presume to say that kindergarten is the most difficult grade of all. However, I will tell you, it is the most different. You're dealing with 5-year-olds. I have now in my classroom 19 5-year-olds. Some of them will not be 6 until July. They need a morning 15-minute break to go outside and expend their energy. We were told that we all met in kindergarten, the benchmarks. Every single child I have passed on in this year, past years, has met the benchmark goals. That was done with allowing children to go outside, eat their snack, and play outside also. Rest time was taken away this year. Mats were not bought. that doesn't bother me. I never used rest time as rest time. I used it as small group instruction. I used it for reading Jack and Annie. We go from book 1 to book 20 by the end of the year. That doesn't bother me. What bothers me is that 15 minutes in the morning. It was said that children have, after lunch recess, 25 minutes. That is not true. They do not have 25 minutes. They probably have one break of 15 to 18 minutes, and the rest of the time is used in transition, lining up, battling other classes going in other directions to get back to their classrooms. This is an extremely sensitive time of development with these children being so young. I would ask, and I mean this completely respectfully, have any of those people who made these sweeping decisions, have they ever taught, been in the ranks of a kindergarten, first or second grade classroom? I would welcome anyone to come in and spend time with me, a month perhaps, to see exactly what we deal with. Today, I had a little boy who was fine up to coming to his centers, and he disintegrated. He said, and this wasn't the first time, I can't swallow. I gave him a hug, I took him out for a drink of water, and I gave him a frog toy to hold. That was his friend, and he was fine. We deal with tears, we deal with bathroom accidents, we deal with everything. It bothers me to my core. I love my job. I love my children in my classroom. I cry every single year at graduation when they leave me. And I cry for them that they are not being allowed to go outside. For what? Because someone is afraid that in 4th grade they're not going to make their benchmarks. 15 minutes outside in kindergarten at 5 years old is determining that. I can see it in the older grades. I can. But you know what we're asking to do with GOLD teaching strategies? GOLD is aligned with appropriate developmental teaching strategies. What we're doing in Milford now, instituting these changes, is directly opposed to GOLD. And as I say, I came here tonight on behalf of my students, on behalf of all the children in the school at Brookside. I'm here because I care, and I think something is definitely wrong.
Thank you very much.
I would also like to add that they work at Brookside on Memorial. Our kids come into the building at 8:25 in the morning. They don't go to lunch until 12:40 in the afternoon. Even when they're at lunch, they're still expected to use a whisper voice or to sit completely quiet and eat their lunch. They can't get up, they can't interact, they have to sit there and eat. They then go back up to my classroom, I do a little activity, and they don't get outside until 1:30 in the afternoon. For a little child, that is the longest day ever, especially if that child where learning does not come easy to them. You try to find every single success that you can for 5 and 6-year-olds. If a little kid is having difficulty with the academics, that 15 minutes in the morning, if they can draw a picture in chalk or they can go down the slide by themselves, that might be enough to get them through the rest of the day because they know that at least they can do something. And you look at that as a success. If a little child is having difficulty learning, they have from 8:25 all the way until 1:30 without a break with minimal successes. And we always try to look at that and try to pinpoint where we can help them succeed, and that might be at morning recess for that 15 minutes. Also, that 15 minutes in the morning might alleviate 35 minutes later on in the day when you have a behavior issue that you then have to deal with because they can't sit in their chair. I had a little boy on Tuesday, I didn't have recess, and by 11:30, he was pulling his arms into his sleeves because he just could not sit there. He couldn't control his body. He had to go with my teaching assistant for a walk because he just needed to move. If that 15 minutes was there for him to get up, to go outside, to run around, to yell, to scream, to do whatever he needed to do, that 35 minutes of me trying to calm him down and let him sit and get to the academic work would have been a lot easier. He would have been more focused. He would have been more attentive. We did end up going out for recess yesterday, and he was fabulous the rest of the day. He was sitting there. He was looking at me. He was focused. He was attentive. That 15 minutes might be for academic time, but we're not looking at the fact that at 11:30, those kids might be checked out because they did not have that 15 minutes to just settle down, rest their brains, relax their bodies, and just be 5 and 6 year olds. We're pushing them so hard that they just need time to be kids and run around and learn how to solve problems outside and learn how to work with other kids and learn how to play games. A lot of our kids in Milford don't have big backyards to run around. They just don't. They have sidewalks and streets. And if we have the capability to bring them out for 15 minutes and allow them to run and get some energy and then expel it, I don't see any problem with that. And that's pretty much all I have to say to that topic. It does help us out behavior-wise, classroom management-wise, and it helps them later on in the day, especially where our lunch is so late, for them to just kind of attend to the rest of the afternoon. So,
Thank you.
Well, again,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so
Thank you
much.
very much for taking the time to come in. Thank you. Anybody else with invitation to speak?
Do you want us to make a couple comments? Or
Yeah.
wanna- Okay. I wanted, before you go, actually, the chairman's allowed us to make a couple of comments. We want to, we don't want to engage necessarily in a debate, because it's just not the right forum for that. And I appreciate you coming out, and it's a lot of courage to come out and voice your passion. And but we do have a couple things I want to set straight, though, just to make sure we're clear. And then we'll do a follow-up. I'm actually going to defer to Kevin in a moment, but a question came up from one of the first presentations just about, it's not really a policy change. We made the change really driven by some academic concerns and some other things that Kevin will talk about, but so that's why it didn't come up as a policy discussion. So recess really isn't that. I mean, time and learning is more of a concern, and that was one of the driving forces for us as well. But again, there's other factors in there. We're not closing our ears to the discussion. Kevin and I talked before the meeting about having a forum, and I do want to say that I think the communication piece is the real problem here, and what was communicated, the timeliness of that, and we've since addressed that. But I think there needs to be more discussion on that. There needs to be more understanding about why this happened, and I agree with you. It shouldn't have been found out after the school year started. It shouldn't have. I completely agree. I'm going to ask Kevin just to make a couple of comments, just to make sure that everyone leaves the room sort of understanding where we came from, and then Kevin and I will do a follow-up for the school committee for families, have a forum event to have a discussion, and see if we have to make some changes and go back and tweak this, and understand the sense of how we got to where we are, and then understanding that from this point, we need to have a discussion about how to move forward. So I hope that alleviates a little bit of the concern for the moment. But Kevin, would you mind just describing a couple of the factors that got us to have the conversation in the first place? Because what it sounds like is sort of eliminated recess, and that's not my takeaway at all.
Yeah, just to be clear, in terms of the schedule, the way it works right now, currently there's a 15-minute morning break for the kindergartners. There's a 25-minute lunch period and a 25-minute recess period. On top of that, kindergarten, just like every other grade in elementary, attends specials. So they go to 2 gym classes, 2 music classes, and a media class. The PE and the music classes are very active classes, so they're doing a lot of movement in those classes, both in music and in PE. The media is kind of a time where they're taking books out of the library, so not quite as active. I don't want to get into all the details, but I do agree with all the speakers that recess is important. The other piece that we're wrestling with, though, is we have a 6-hour and 15-minute school day, which isn't a tremendous amount of time, and we have those students, to Ms. Johnson's point, for 180 days. So we have them for a limited amount of time. we also are holding students at all levels, kindergarten included, to higher expectations than we ever have before. And that's coming from the federal government, the state government, and we're supporting those policies. I think it makes more sense to kind of go through, let me kind of share with the public what our plan is for the forum, just so folks understand what we're thinking about. And it sounds like we need to have a forum with teachers as well. So I think we'll have a forum with parents and a forum with teachers, just to kind of get feedback across the board in terms of what the teachers are seeing and what the parent concerns are. Basically, I think what we'll do in the forum is present kind of the research, which does say recess is important. It absolutely does. And talk about why we came to the decision that we did, the process that we followed. And then after we get feedback from parents and teachers, we'll kind of go back and, you know, take that feedback into consideration as we kind of move forward, if that makes sense. All right. Thank you.
And we'll certainly keep the school committee informed and share that with you. Like, we want to go back with the principals and vet this more completely, arrange these follow-up forum discussions with staff. And we did some of that last spring, if you recall, at the schools, at least at Memorial School we did. I don't know that we did it.
I think we invited the Memorial and the Brookside staff together
to a
there.
joint meeting.
Mhm.
But clearly, there's more to be said. So, and now that you've done it for a couple of weeks, there's some, you know, how it's actually impacting the day-to-day instruction
Right.
is pause for us to take reflection on that. So, consider that among our top priorities.
And the superintendent and I did have a discussion before we came in here, and I did commit that there will be school committee members at those forums as well. Okay?
Mike?
Just one question. Are the case studies and the research going to be made available to us prior to the forum? Would that be possible? So we can understand thoroughly prior?
I can send links out. To pull it all together and copy it would probably be a little difficult, but I can send links out to some of the, some of the meta research. We'll send that out as part of the announcement.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think that having forums where we're including teachers and parents together, I think is good. Something can look great on paper, but in practical application, we may learn things that would change our minds on how we move forward. So, I think it's a good process, and I think we need to make sure that we broadcast it sufficiently so everyone in the room has an opportunity to speak at those forums and be heard at those forums, and all opinions can come out, because, we're here to represent the community. This isn't a school system imposing our will on parents and children. And we're all members of the community, and this is important to all of us. And so if something's not working, then we'll find a way to make it work.
Fix it.
Right.
Okay? Thank you very, very much. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening. All right. Keep up the good work.
We never say that.
It's past my bedtime.
Next agenda item is announcements, correspondence, and distributions. Does any member have a correspondence?
I'd like to apologize for my out of uniform tonight. I feel a little underdressed, football practice.
That's all right.
I didn't want to disappoint. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Joe, you make me feel more comfortable.
Right? You're showing your school spirit.
Right. That's all I've got.
Patrick?
I did have an announcement. The Milford Special Olympics Committee, they're holding their annual fun run. It's going to be at the high school in the back by the gymnasium. Registration is at 8 o'clock this Saturday. And so that is to raise money for the Special Olympics. It's something that unfortunately I couldn't attend the past 2 years, but I have made a habit of attending, and I will be there this year. And I would invite anyone in the community that wants to come out and support our Special Olympians to please attend on Saturday.
Thank you. Any other member? Do we have any correspondence or distributions, Mr. Superintendent?
Nothing this evening.
Nothing. Okay. And with that, we move to agenda item number 4, report of the superintendent of schools.
Sure, a couple of brief items here. The first was a response to the last meeting. I was asked to put together a proposal for school committee members to be involved in the schools in some way. So I met with the leadership team, and we proposed in your packet, we put a Friday schedule, which I think was suggested, where we envision opening this up to all 7 members to attend the specific schools we've laid out, 1 school per month, for about an hour. That can be flexible. It could be 2 hours, and I understand people have your own day jobs you have to be at. But certainly it's flexible in terms of time. We've laid out the dates. That seems to work for the administrators. The other piece that I wanted to supplement with this, because in terms of coming up with multiple proposals, I think this one works the best, but also Mr. Mazzucchelli had emailed us both,
Right.
actually, with when he was chairman. Paul had designated certain members of the school committee to be, sort of the assigned liaison to a certain school. And not for the purpose of being the advocate necessarily of the school, but just to be in the loop and kind of come back to the school committee and report out what's happening. And really, if my understanding is correct. But what he did present in that memo was it doesn't have to be like face-to-face. It could just be email, or it could be phone calls, just a liaison point person. So maybe that's something the committee would like to consider as a possible supplement to the visitation, is also maybe selecting a school to be part of. You can't have a school committee member on a school council just because it violates the law there to do that, because you have your own committee. But certainly you could be at PTO meetings to the extent your schedules would allow you to attend, or be in touch with principals and so forth. So that's my thought. What I propose, though, for this evening, as I was asked, is a Friday schedule starting October 17th through April 10th, one Friday per month. We open invitation to members of the school committee to come to the schools, and basically working our way up from preschool through high school.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Can I add
Yep.
something to that? I'm all for doing this, first of all. I remember when I first came on here, we were all assigned to schools. It was great. What I'd love to see become part of this is when you're communicating with the schools that you're assigned to, is to get an understanding of what their needs are that don't necessarily find their way here all the time. And what I mean by that is, come to budget conversations, when we have our meetings in December, and we meet, on Saturdays, there's that list. It's the wish list, right? And it's so easy for us to say, no, we're just going to pass on this, pass on this, pass on this. This is a necessity that was identified by the principal, and that's what we focus on. But we might find things at the schools. For example, I want to say it was at Woodland, and they have mats there that are 30 years old. They're ripped. They need to be replaced. I think somebody even made a comment tonight about needing to replace mats. And it's simple little things like that if nobody ever, if it just keeps getting brushed aside over and over and over again, it's just never going to get solved. So when you're communicating with your schools, if you can find out things like that and make sure that when we do have our budget conversations that we are addressing the needs to little things like that can make that school happy, the people in it. And so that's what I'd like to see come out of this as well.
Thank you. Patrick?
Mike, when you first suggested this at the last meeting, I thought that you were talking about assigning members to schools to be liaisons, and for all the reasons Don just said, I think it's a spectacular idea. I think that we got away from it and we should go back to it, honestly. So I love the schedule. I love the availability. I mean, I would almost say I think it's a good idea to add a school assignment to this. And it's, and when we did it before, it was, attend the PTO meeting if you can.
Right.
And if you can't,
That's what I do. I currently do the PTO meetings now.
Yeah.
For Woodland, 'cause I did it last year too with Brookside. I went to all those PTOs, one, to get a handle of what I'd be getting into with you guys in the group. And oh my God, it helped out great.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think, I think being there and having that connection, and I mean, I met people when I had Memorial I've had Brookside. And I mean, I met people who are my friends today that I wouldn't have otherwise known had I not been there. So I think it's a great idea. I really do.
Tonight was a great example of that, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have kids in a specific school, you may not know what some of the challenges are and what some of the issues are, and this would allow us to keep our fingers on the pulse by being that liaison at the school. And I know we talked about it briefly at the last meeting. I really love the idea of having the liaison in terms of the Friday site visits. I just want to make sure that we're sensitive to what's going on in the school when we're there, we're taking the tour, and that it's not being disruptive in any way to the principals or
That's
the
why we broke
staff.
it down to be an hour visit, and this way, if we sort of dovetail the two concepts together, let's just say you were assigned to one of the schools and you're not so familiar with one of the other schools, you may want to pop in that hour just to see a day in the life. But meanwhile, you're going to be still connected to a school as liaison. So I think you get the best of both worlds if we put those two models together. It's just how much time you have in your own professional schedules to do that. But certainly, I think it's a great way to get a handle on what happens in the daily workings of the school. As far as if that's where the committee wishes to go, I'll just need to have an understanding of to whom should be assigned to which building. We could do that by a lottery system or whatever it may be, or if
What
there's certain
would the members
interests.
like to do?
If I may make a request, I've been assigned to elementary schools so far. I prefer a higher grade, but I have no preference otherwise.
What school would you prefer?
The high school, I suppose.
If you wanna just do
Yeah,
these
let's do it
assignments
right
tonight.
now.
That's okay.
yeah.
I mean, I
Sure.
don't wanna step,
No,
I don't wanna
saves-
take anything away from
saves-
anybody that really wants.
Saves us time.
Joe?
Woodland?
I'll take anything. I'm happy to go anywhere. I don't know a lot about Memorial, so maybe I could. My kids didn't go there.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Memorial?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Joe?
go right down the list, I'll take Brookside.
Uh,
Like a draft.
My daughter's at no school east, so this is. And Scott gets Shining Star.
Well, Mike
Or
can
Stacy.
choose,
Yeah,
Mike gets his
Stacy.
choice, and then we can assign.
You might want
That's right,
Shining Star.
yeah, where would you like
That's
to
the
go?
fun
You
one.
have,
That is
I'll
the
take
fun one.
Shining Star. That has a special spot in my heart.
Absolutely.
and then,
That is a good one. It really
and
is.
then Scott would get
West.
Stacy.
Or Stacy.
Yeah, Middle School West, yeah.
Middle school, I was middle school West when I
You
went
dating
there,
this
so,
one?
yeah, I am dating myself.
All right, so, make sure I have it clear here.
Sorry, I still call it East Central.
So,
That's what it was when
so
I-
Mike will have Shining Star,
Fourth grade.
Yep.
Joe will have Brookside,
Central.
Jen will have
I went to
Memorial,
fourth grade there.
Joe
Before Brookside
will
was-
have Woodland,
No kidding.
Scott will have Stacy, Don will have Middle School East,
I didn't
and
realize
Patrick will have Milford High School. Okay, very good. So I'll revise this, to include those assignments, and I'll get that out tomorrow.
Great.
Thank
Okay.
That's great.
Thank you. I know it's gonna take a lot of everybody's time, but it just shows the community that we're very involved.
It was a great suggestion, Mike, it
Yeah,
really was.
thank you.
And the other, next agenda item, Kevin, would you mind helping me just get that up on the?
Yeah, it's ready to go.
This is not a PowerPoint, but I was talking with Patrick Collin prior, and I've asked him to sort of share the discussion with me on this, is the Woodland School Project update. It's starting to get to that point in time where we're seeing visualizations and we're having discussions about real things in classrooms and facades and brickwork, and it's starting to get to be a lot of fun, actually. So I think it would be useful to show the community is what's happening with the site plan, because we are still on schedule to, and we probably take for granted, because we have these discussions all the time, but yet the school committee is involved. We want to make sure we keep you apprised of all this. So, but we are set to break ground in the spring with, as I mentioned at the last meeting, with early bids for steel fabrication and those types of things. It's gonna be difficult to see still with this, huh?
Yeah, it's, because it's not a full PDF, it's just the,
Okay. We'll make this available on our website. I know you have it in your iPads and the packets. We want to
Yeah,
show it
for
to the
the-
community.
For
And
the sake of
Tom, go
orientation,
from 75 to 100.
This
yeah.
is.
Patrick, you want a pointer?
then it kind of fits on the screen too.
This
Wanna-
is,
If I go to a
do
hundred.
you have a pointer?
Yeah. Just push the hazard light there.
Oh, yeah.
So
See, it just kind of.
for the sake of orientation, this is North Vine Street. This is where the existing school building is, where it's going to be an athletic field. This is the new school building down here.
Do you want me to shift to the next one? Bob, or-
Yeah, if you don't like it.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it.
And what we're trying to show here is at this point, not what the new building looks like. We're trying to show the first phases, because as you can imagine, the challenge is having Woodland School fully operational, while at the same time having a fully operational work site. There's certain parameters around when vehicles can and cannot make deliveries. For example, you won't have trucks coming, making deliveries at the same time school buses and parents are arriving to school. And Shamit's done a great job. They presented this last night to the school building committee from there. So Patrick, if you want to talk about this slide.
So this photo here, this rendering, is of the only period in time where the construction workers and the school department will share access to the site. So there'll be a shared road coming in here. The construction workers will come off in this direction, and obviously buses and parents will come through it in this direction. This should probably only be for about 3 weeks while school is still going on. And there'll be blackout times when the construction workers won't be able to come in and out of the site. But essentially in this site, we're going to maintain the parking areas here. We are potentially going to designate a new emergency assembly area in the circle where the trees are. We'll take the trees out and put down gravel. But it's still all a little bit loose right now. But this is the very first phase of construction. This is essentially from June of 2015 to probably August of 2015. And if anything is incorrect, Bob, please
Yeah,
stop me.
no, perfect.
Let me just,
Yeah, just go on to the next one.
Patrick, were they not allowed to gain access to the construction site from the back end of it?
Yeah, we don't want to disturb our neighbors back there. So there is access for emergency purposes, but we really don't want
Oh,
trucks
yeah.
coming in
Alright,
and
I
out
remember
of those neighborhoods. It's not fair to our neighbors. We want to be good neighbors about all of this. This is the second phase, so this is once school begins again in the fall of 2015. And you can see that this will be parent and student access to the Woodland site, and this will be the contractor entrance to the site. And there's a sort of a dead space in between the two. So once we start the school year in 2015, construction vehicles and students and buses and parents, they won't be interacting at all in any way. There'll actually be a fence erected along the entire length of this driveway and around the construction site itself, and that will also be gated up off of North Vine Street. When they put these in place, they're going to have blackout times when there won't be any deliveries. So anytime that the school buses are coming in, trucks that try and show up at the site when we're trying to get students into the building will be waved off. If they do it twice, they'll get fined, and they'll learn pretty quickly not to try and disturb when we have students coming into the building and students leaving the
Is
building.
there gonna be a detail there, like a police officer or something, or is it just gonna be like teachers saying you can't come at this time?
Yeah, I mean, what we had discussed was having someone from Shawmut just waving them off.
Okay.
So I think if we need to hire a detail, we will.
Okay.
So when we definitely don't want them anywhere near the school
Right.
anytime students are coming in. We just want complete separation there. And it's also, I think, important to mention that any contractor or construction worker that's gonna be working on that site is getting quarried and fingerprinted. So we're gonna know the people that are on these sites. So we're pretty comfortable of the security on it.
And Patrick, just a quick question, so that phase or that, how long would that period last? When
That's-
we have the,
The date is just below, I think it's August to January, I
It's
think.
actually June 15th, June of 15 to August of 15 for that
Yep.
particular phase.
okay.
If I see that correctly.
Yep.
And then, Patrick, if you don't mind just showing that wheel wash area?
Oh, sure, yeah,
Yeah,
so,
so one concern that had come up was with
Yeah.
all the vehicles kind of coming back and forth and mud on the tires, there's actually a gravel base water, where we rinse the wheels off as the trucks go to keep that from getting onto the main roadways.
and we've gotten a commitment from Shawmut that if the road starts to get dirty, they'll pay to have it swept. So we'll,
I think you or somebody last night even suggested, well, you might need a street cleaner every day.
I believe that was Patrick Kennelly
Oh,
that
it's Patrick
suggested
Kennelly.
that, yes.
Of course.
But it's
Surprisingly vocal.
Yeah, surprisingly. It's really well thought out in terms of, you can just tell working with these guys, they've done this before. This is not their first time.
Yeah. So we go to the next phase?
And this phase is from August 2015 to June of 2016. So it's really the whole year.
And so, in this phase is really the construction of the building. So this is when the majority of the construction is going to occur. And what's nice, and what we'd spoken about, and I don't want to steal Bob's thunder, but the children will be able to see the construction at this point, because it's gonna come above the fences. So it's an opportunity, for us to have some interest and to talk about what's happening over there. And Bob had a spectacular idea about capturing images of this building as it goes up, and I don't want to steal your thunder, Bob. If you
No,
want to speak to
the
that.
idea is to try to make this as educational as we possibly can as well. The kids will see it coming to life, but also for the community and certainly people who've supported, a $60 million project, $60+ million project. We want to make available this project over time. So like you've seen in other jobs, I'm sure, time-lapse photography. And we'll set up an arrangement with a weatherproof camera that will actually show this project coming to life from day one. And from the minute the ground is broken, we'll have a camera running to capture this all the way through, so we can actually give progress updates and show the school committee at various meetings what's been done in that particular period of time. So it will be a great bird's eye look into it. What also came up last night was sort of the next level. I don't know if you were, I was surprised by this could actually be done. It was a great thought. Not only the time lapse of what you see outside, but actually camera shots of what goes on inside. So if down the road, at some point in time, you need to know what's behind a wall or what's in the ceiling, they actually do video of the construction coming to life inside. So you don't have any guesses as to where certain electrical work or HVAC things are located inside the wall. So construction has certainly come a long way. So those are some of just the illustrations that we have of the future of this project. There's a couple more slides, I think. This is phase 4A. This is the June June 16th to July 16th.
And the important parts to note about this, the full construction fences, complete separation of students from construction workers, blackout dates. So this is really just the construction of that building.
And then finally, I said the 16th, I meant the year of 2016. The phase 4B is the early 16, July 16, so I can't read it here.
So here, this is the site as it will look when they turn the building over to us so we can put students back in there. So over the summer of, that's okay. In August of 2016, what they will do is pave this loop here. So this is just gonna be like a crushed base, because we don't want the trucks driving over it and making a mess of the road. So they'll pave this loop when they turn the building over to us. This parking lot will also be ours. That's when they'll demolish this building and move all of the material off-site. So this is obviously the last piece that will be completed. Weather permitting, everything goes well, everything goes the way it's supposed to. We'll have that turf field in there towards the end of 16, and hopefully not as late as early 17. But
And that's, the other slide's really not, that's really,
yeah, this is an overlay of the way the different driveways are gonna go in and the time frame, so they could illustrate which areas we'll have access to and which ones we won't have access to, and what's gonna remain parking and what's transitional parking. I mean, we could go over this, but it's not that.
yeah, it's,
Suffice to say that we have enough parking for contractors and teachers while this is happening, I think is probably all we need to say.
that's all we have for,
Yeah.
Any
for an
members
update
have
on
any
that.
questions?
I just think it's
great.
amazing for a three-story building to see how much more efficient it looks when you look at the current Woodland
Oh,
and
sure,
you see them
yeah.
right side by side like that. It's pretty interesting.
And the building's almost, not quite twice the size, but almost twice the
Right.
size of the
Yeah.
existing Woodland School. It takes up so much less space.
That's great.
It is.
Thank you for,
Yeah, it was
helping out with that.
It was a great meeting last night. I mean, we're talking about things like finishes. So God bless.
Bless you.
So we're talking about, how can we find a way to incorporate Milford pink granite into the building, so we can have that talking point for students. And we're talking about the different finishes and what the entryway should look like. We had a big discussion yesterday about whether there should be a tree in front of the building or there shouldn't be a tree, because there's glass windows very nearby. So, I mean, it's nice having these discussions as opposed to talking about HVAC systems, which I know are very, very important, but not terribly interesting to me. So, this is exciting time. It's really exciting.
Is there also faculty involvement in terms of picking furniture and
Yes.
so is that going on right now?
They've already been part of that process, so we're at the point where we're pushing onto the 90% complete documents. So a lot of those specs have been done. We've had a number of focus group meetings by department with teachers about what kind of cubbies do they need, what kind of this, what kind of that. So, and that work will still continue through the point where we have these documents at 100% complete. But yes, they have all the staff have been involved.
Great.
The meetings with faculty began, honestly, as soon as we had the architect selected. So
Yeah.
they've been ongoing.
Over a year. Any other questions we can try to answer?
Any other member? With that, we move on to agenda item 5, report of the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Human Resources.
I have for the committee's approval this evening 4 warrants. The first warrant is in the amount of $25,127.26.
Motion by
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Joe, seconded by Don. All in favor?
The second warrant is in the amount of $139,111.46.
Motion by Patrick, second by Jen. All in favor?
The third warrant is in the amount of $27,742.17.
Motion by Patrick, second by Joe. All in favor?
The last warrant is in the amount of $279,739.86.
Motion from Jen, second by Joe. All in favor?
And the committee also has received the FY15 budget update as we move forward with the new year starting. We have had a few retirements that will cause us to watch those funds in the custodial department. We will have to make up some funding there, but I'm sure we will through the school year. 2 retirements that were unknown. There is a personnel update this evening. No vote is required. It is for your information only. And I do have a professional development request that does require your vote in the amount of $59,268.56.
Motion from
Oh,
Pat,
I'll take that.
second by Joe. All in favor?
And that's it for this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much.
Mike?
Yes, Patrick?
Kathy, why are we continuing to maintain a line item for kindergarten tuition?
Is it at a zero balance,
Yes,
Patrick?
yeah.
I do have a few small claims cases that are out,
Okay.
and until those are resolved,
That
I
makes
just
sense.
assume continue it.
Any other member? Okay, item number 6, report of the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction Assessment.
Great. I'm going to be really brief tonight. I want to share with you, the committee, some of the priorities we have for this upcoming year, and I'll share them in more detail as we move through the year. But I just want to give you a kind of a heads up on kind of what we're working on as a district. One of the number one priorities this year is preparation for the new park exam. And there's a lot of work going into kind of reviewing the MCAS results, looking at curriculum, looking at the test questions. Part of the issue, and I talked a little bit about this last year, is because it's a new test, we're kind of building the plane as it's taking off to some degree, and there's just not a lot of information out there. The teachers are working really hard to kind of align their classes and prepare their students, and it's really more important that our curriculum is aligned to the Common Core because the questions are gonna come from there. And that leads into our second thing, which is the Common Core alignment. We're constantly looking at our curriculum at all levels, kindergarten through 12th grade, to ensure that we're presenting the best possible curriculum to our students. This involves literacy across the curriculum and writing across the curriculum, which is tied into this as well, and I'll be talking about these themes throughout the year. District determined measures, this is our first year of implementation of the district determined measures program. We have a new technology integration teacher that is starting to set up appointments with all departments and grade levels across the district. And we're setting up Excel spreadsheets, which will become visual analytic resources that will not only capture the data that the teachers are collecting, but will also analyze the data for them and take kind of the guesswork out of it, and we'll have common formatting across the district.
Kevin, what kind of, I've been just hearing some hush chatter about anxiety about DDMs from our staff. Can you just speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. Every educator in the state of Massachusetts is required to have 2 district determined measures connected to them. That includes all teachers, all principals, superintendents, assistant superintendents. Everyone has to have at least 2 measures. And basically based on the results of these measures, each educator after 2 years of collection of the data will be given an impact on student learning. And that impact is either low, moderate, or high. And low means that students are learning less than they would be expected in a particular year. Moderate, roughly what they're expected to in a particular year. High, greater than what they're expected to in a particular year. We're focusing on growth rather than achievement where we can. We're not going to be able to do that in all cases because some of the measures just aren't going to allow for that. The reason we look at growth is to make sure that there's kind of an apples to apples comparison to some degree. So if you're teaching like an intervention class, for example, where the students are struggling, they may not attain grade level, but they may make amazing growth. They may make a year and a half's worth of growth in a year, which would be a high impact on student learning, just to give you an example. Massachusetts actually took kind of a thoughtful approach to this. This was part of kind of the original Race to the Top grant and money and tied to educator evaluation. And if an educator is proficient in the rest of their evaluation, but have a low impact on student learning, the only impact to the educator is going from a 2-year plan to a 1-year plan. And obviously if they're moderate or high, they stay on that two-year path. The real focus and emphasis that we're placing in the Milford Public Schools is really on the conversations around the data. Like, what are you seeing in the data? How are you going to adjust your practice based on what you're seeing from the learning data that you're picking up? And we're not just focusing on the district determined measures, because in some cases they're very, very good measures. In other cases, in other settings, it might just be part of the picture. So we're really taking a broader view of this. And again, the emphasis is on the conversations around the data and how is that gonna impact your practice? What adjustments are you making?
So I understand that the state was so kind as to make a penalty for not meeting your DDM, as simple as going from a 2-year plan to a 1-year plan. I'm wondering, as we're establishing those DDMs and as we're evaluating them, how consistent are we across all of our school buildings that these are done with a district vision as opposed to a building vision?
Yeah, part of every curriculum team leader meeting that we have, and these are the teachers throughout the district who represent reading, math, science, social studies, basically all the content areas across grade levels. We talk about district determined measures, and not because it's the most important thing that we're doing, but because it's a new thing.
Right.
And it's new for everybody. And we're really trying to emphasize that the critical piece is the conversations. We don't make any determinations for 2 years. And in some cases, we may not be able to make a determination because for things like the MCAS or PARC, there's gonna be very clear cut lines in terms of what's low, moderate, and high in terms of your impact on student learning. But if you're using, like the high school did a great job of doing, having writing district determined measures across, before they were even really district determined measures, across the school last year. And we don't really have the historical data to make what I would consider statistically accurate measures of growth.
Mhm.
So it's gonna be a kind of a work in progress as we're going through, and I've emphasized that to all of our teachers, our principals, and we may need to make adjustments because we're kind of, especially in the cases where they're kind of homegrown or educator developed measures,
Mhm.
we're gonna have to make some adjustments, and there's gonna be real value in having those conversations as a department. If you're a social studies department that has a writing goal, you expected it to go a certain way, you have to look at things like, was it the question, there's 100 different
Right.
variables connected to it.
The way you just described it to me, honestly, I would like to think that if I were a teacher working for you, that would put me at ease about the way these will be applied. Are you confident would you feel comfortable saying that you believe all of the teachers in our school district have a similar understanding of the implication of these DDMs as we now do as a school committee?
I would say they're getting there. We're gonna have a professional development day on October 10th, and I'm gonna do kind of a detailed presentation. And I've met with, I would say, I can't say everybody, but most of the groups throughout the district. But this will be to all of our educators and really kind of go through it and answer their questions. And again, I've made an open invitation to any department or grade level that can set up a meeting with me, and a lot of departments and grade levels have.
Good.
And some have become ongoing meetings because it's complicated work, and I'm not a psychometrician myself. So it's a lot of using kind of the guidelines we get from the DESE, which in some cases are very good, in other cases are still kind of a work in progress because
Right.
it's a new program.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Can I ask a question, Kevin?
Sure.
Like maybe along similar lines to Patrick, in terms of who's kind of leading the charge. So at the high school, and I'm not even sure about the middle school, there are department heads and things like that, but at the elementary level, who's kind of getting in there? And if you're a curriculum leader and you have a day job of being a classroom teacher, where is this time found, and how are they working that out?
That's our biggest challenge, is the time
Yeah.
piece, because all of our curriculum team leaders have similar schedules. They're all full-time teachers.
Right.
So we're using a lot of common planning time, some time during professional development days this year. We kind of did the easy part last year, we're kind of identifying the measures. The
Right.
difficult part is really kind of setting kind of where the low, medium, and high, how you're gonna assess it, and then what you do with the data, and what adjustments do you make.
Yeah, one thing that we may want to think about around budget time, when we talk, Don, about some of the needs are, how is this rolling out, and what's people's comfort level in terms of this work? Because really helping teachers look at that data, especially when you're talking about your younger kindergarten teachers, first grade teachers, I find a lot of times teachers don't even understand, does this count as data? Does this count as evidence? And so I think maybe to think about, is there a position we should be talking about, or another way of looking at providing supports, because even those curriculum leaders get tired and they're working all
Right,
day, and then
and-
we're asking them, now you're gonna meet from 3:30 to 5 to talk about how we're gonna roll this out, and then find a time during your day. And so I completely agree with everything you're doing. I just think, over time, how do we most efficiently support that work? Because you're only one person, you can,
Yeah. And we're looking at a lot of ways to do that. We've
Yeah.
developed data teams at each school, which I
Yeah.
think is helping, and that's kind of
Yeah.
broadening the practice and the understanding.
yeah.
But again, it's it's a new concept for,
Right.
you know, data-driven instruction is kind of a relatively young
Yeah.
concept for
Yeah.
education. Big data is a relatively young concept for
Right.
education.
Yeah.
So in addition to that, we're also looking at piloting Edwin Teaching and Learning, and I spoke about this in the spring. The state is ready to roll this out, and this is going to kind of be a one-stop shopping, hopefully, to some degree, in terms of, we looked at Atlas and a number of different vendors for kind of curriculum mapping tools, and this would house curriculum mapping tools. There's also a lot of resources connected to it, as well as assessment tools that the teachers could use. So the way we're approaching the rollout of this is we're looking for volunteers who have an interest in trying it out. And what I said to the curriculum team 2 days ago when we met is, I'm not expecting you to try everything. I want you to kind of look at it, see if it is of interest to you, and then pick maybe 1 or 2 things to try and use this year. And we're really going to use this year as a year to decide, is this something that's a go forward for us? Is it valuable? And hopefully we'll get enough people to pilot enough parts of it that we'll see, is it worth bringing on board? The thing I love about it too is it's free for the next several years, where some of these vendor-driven programs are $10,000 to $15,000 to $20,000 a year. So this could end up saving the district, you know, $10,000 to $100,000, depending on what we do with it and how we use it.
Right.
So from that perspective, it's very appealing. I actually met with I think he's the New England representative for ThinkGate, which is the vendor that works with Ohio and Massachusetts on this particular project. And he really liked the approach because he said, you know, if you mandate it for everybody, nobody's really, you know, you're gonna get a lot of pushback, you're not gonna get a lot of use. And to do it this way and kind of build enthusiasm and interest from people who are finding success with parts that they're actually interested in initially, then we can figure out how we can use it as a district.
That's great.
Okay. Again, supporting data-driven instruction generally through data teams and meetings with teachers. We're also undertaking the review and revision of the K-4 standards-based report card. We're forming a committee of teachers and administrators to kind of look at the standards-based report card and see how we can improve that from a perspective of, is it user-friendly for parents? Are teachers able to capture student progress and performance effectively through the tool?
Kevin, just to add to that, you heard the kindergarten teachers mention about teaching strategies gold a couple of times in the presentations. That's an adopted sort of K curriculum. So I think it'll be part of the discussion what Kevin will have with the teachers is to see, does that align with the standards-based report card? And how much time do the teachers need? And are we giving them the time they need to actually roll that out? And the point that was made tonight about the developmental side of that, are we effectively negating what the curriculums that we signed on by our own practice of schedule? So there's a lot to be looked at, but we are looking at that. That's new to us this year. That was grant-driven, if I recall.
It was, but it's gonna become a requirement.
It's yeah.
It's gonna be within a couple of years, every district in the state, I think, is gonna be required to use this tool.
I see there's no reason why we should have more and more requirements.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense, so.
Right. And that was the next thing on my list, actually, the teaching strategies.
Oh,
Because it's a new implementation at the kindergarten level. A number of teachers have been meeting about this. Last year, they went to a number of state level meetings. I think we saw you at one of them.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
We also went through a training, all our kindergarten teachers went through a training in, I think, June of last year, and they're implementing 2 of the standards. I believe there's 5 standards. I could be wrong about that, but I think they're piloting 2 of the 5 standards this year, and we're really looking at, can we integrate that into what we're already doing so we're not duplicating efforts? And I don't know if that's possible or not. We're gonna find out this year. And then the final thing we're really looking at across the district is technology integration. How can we increase the effective use of technology in the classroom to enhance student learning is really the last big thing we're looking at. And I'll be kind of updating you on all 10 of these things kind of throughout the year, because they're going to be ongoing projects. And I'm all set. Thanks.
Thank you.
Member, any questions?
Questions?
Thank you, Dr. Kevin. And with that, the next agenda item is the subcommittee updates. Athletic Committee?
Met yesterday, was it yesterday or the day before,
Yeah.
John?
Tuesday.
And we discussed the current posting that we have for our athletic director replacement. We agreed to the roles and responsibilities along with the building principals. And we also discussed a search process after the posting closes. everybody was in agreement that there would be a screening committee that would bring 5 to 6 candidates to the 3 building principals to have an interview process, and bring back to the superintendent 1 candidate that they choose to make as a recommendation for him to hire and appoint. And we also discussed in, what was the last item? Oh, the field usage. We discussed the current software package that Nick is using versus moving forward with the School Dude and integrating 2 different softwares, hopefully trying to make it a little bit easier for the athletic director to use possibly 1. Was there anything else, Dawn, that you wanted to add?
No? Do you have a question?
I'm sorry,
No, go,
you're
go.
looking at me. I couldn't remember how we were gonna have for that screening committee, if we had chosen who we wanted on that. I don't think we got to that.
Well, Nick Sakili,
I mean, I'd love to be on it myself.
No.
no,
I know, that's what I'm saying, I would love to, but I know I
We're
can't.
not,
No, I know,
we can't
that's,
have
but I don't know
anything
who
to do
it
with
was, is
hiring
what I
and
was looking
firing,
for,
so-
right.
Nick agreed to sit on the screening committee, but we did not formalize
Right.
Yeah.
who would make up that
I
screening
think
committee. I
right
don't know
now
if
we
it's-
were gonna leave it at Nick's,
Okay.
let Nick decide
Okay.
who should be on it. I
whether
mean,
it be a coach,
I think everybody's in
parent.
agreement, nobody's gonna do a better job at this than Nick
Mhm.
Right,
himself.
right.
So, and considering we have Nick, my feeling was just let him run with this, so.
I was gonna ask the question if Nick was involved. I mean, we have probably the greatest resource we could possibly
Right.
have in
Yeah.
Nick Sakili.
Right.
And I would think that he probably could do a pretty good job of defining what that position should be, and probably would do a pretty good job of leading the selection process of who that should be. I mean, he was served here with distinction for a long time.
Well, Nick is essentially who developed the job posting, and John Hughes, the middle school principal, said, there was nothing more that you could add. It was so thorough.
Yeah.
And Nick said, hey, I put everything on there that I did, and that's what you have. So
Right.
it's pretty clear.
Very nice.
Great.
Any other member, Joe?
Kathy, what's the timeline for the job posting and hiring?
The job posting went up today, so it will be up for a couple of weeks. And that gives plenty of we're hoping to have somebody on board November 1st that could transition with Nick, because we have Nick until December 1st, and then he is absolutely going away. So we need to have that as a mission.
We tried to get him to stay.
And
He wouldn't stay.
Did you make that clear?
he's going to disappear.
I'm done December 1st.
Yeah, exactly.
crickets.
Yeah.
That sounded kinda ominous.
So we're fortunate to have him, and we're hoping to have the right candidate that can transition and work anytime after November 1st.
Just one quick question for the people that are at home. Where is this posted in case they wanna take a look at it?
It is everywhere that we would typically post. School Spring, which is an educator website, as well as the town, our own Milford Schools job posting, and
It's posted in all the buildings.
Okay.
all the
district-wide.
buildings.
Just for someone who's out of town that might be watching.
Oh, sure,
this,
yeah.
They might,
Yeah, that you log into our district website.
okay.
Yeah, we could do that.
We had about 50 candidates when we
Yeah, that's what you
posted
were
in
telling me.
July, so, I think we'll have plenty of good qualified candidates interested.
Any other questions? No? Next committee was the Safety and Security Committee update, and we met as well. To the superintendent's point, he sent out an email to Donnie and I think it was August, asking us both what we thought he would like to see us, work on in the coming year. And Donnie came back and responded that he wanted to continue to work on the drug and alcohol awareness. And I came back and, wanted to work more on the concern the secretaries had at the end of last year of the number of times they've got to get up to open the door, people entering the building, how are we securing them? As everybody knows, we discuss at the meeting at Middle School East, how we built this kiosk area now where people are holding. So at the meeting, we kind of merged everything together, and out of it came, we ended up taking, I was the member that was elected, to go into the wellness committee as the safety and security member because we felt, the superintendent felt that that was really an area that we needed to work on more this year. Like, we've done such a good job of, marking doors, containment, still working on lobby guard. As the superintendent knows, we have a few issues that day that came up about lobby guard, which we're still working on. But we're making very good forward progress in those areas, and now we feel that, and with Mrs. Dagny's there that day, which was a big help, that the drug and alcohol and the health awareness is an area this year that we really need to put our focus on. And so that's kind of what we discussed and where we're gonna head this coming year.
And just to add to that, if I may, we started this with Chris Herron last year. We started that work. Already at Middle School East, we had a student come in, a former student who lost a friend to Molly at one of these electric parties, and just a terrible story. She wanted to come back to Milford, where she grew up, and to share her story about losing this friend and how powerful that was. And she's not a circuit presenter, so this is difficult. She came into my office and did a presentation for me, and broke down several times, going through this for the first time for herself. And I think in many ways it's therapeutic for her. She actually invited the mother of her best friend who died to the Middle School East and did a presentation there for some staff. There was many parents responded back saying, she's like, I heard this was an outstanding presentation. Why was my child involved with that? Really what it grew out of Alicia Brudner's health class, and she wanted to just not take on, she's a college girl. She wasn't ready to take on a whole school assembly. She wanted to just test it out with some of the classes. We do have her lined up coming to Milford High School in October. Certainly we'll share that with the committee, the date. I'd love to share it with all 4 classes. I don't think that she has the emotional stamina to do 4 presentations. And I'm hopeful that she'll agree to letting us record one of her presentations, and then we can broadcast, because one of the struggles that Dawn and I talked about last year was getting the families in, the families who need to hear it. And so one way we can do that now is to push it out to them. If we can capture this as a YouTube video, we can send a link home, and then hopefully show it at the school. The kids will go home and tell their parents, I watched this, I had this really powerful presentation. Now they can follow up in the privacy of their own home and have a discussion about that. We think that's the better way to go. But we want to have more conversations about this, other kinds of initiatives. The opioid crisis, you see a lot of that happening, discussions in town with Senator Moore and others, and how we can deal with that. So mental health for us is a big issue, as is chemical substance abuse and so forth. So that's a big push for us. I think the right place for that is the Health and Wellness Committee, and then channeling all of those community resources, Milford Regional Medical Center and so forth, and then having community representation, which resolves the issue of we discussed at the prior meeting. I'm also going to start including minutes in packets. We'll find some way to include that in here, as it probably is just distributions of all these kinds of subcommittee meetings that are happening. Because while there's conversations taking place and get summarized here, it may be useful to see in real time what was taking place. So we'll start to pull that together for future school committee packets, so you can see what these meetings are taking place. But just to add to that.
Thank you very much.
If I could ask one follow-up question.
Sure.
In terms of the safety, I know it seems like a few years ago Milford was really a leader with doing the simulation of the active shooter in the schools, and I know the kids have come home and there's been a communication about lockdown and things like that. But what I'm not sure about is where we are right now with kind of the next step of that, which a lot of districts are looking at in terms of putting more choices in the hands of teachers. And maybe you've already done that, but I'm not clear on that. The evacuation, what do you do if you don't do a lockdown? What are the other options? And are we considering moving in that direction for additional training?
That was a big outcome of that active shooter training. And that's what we agreed to as a school committee, was to allow them to have the flexibility of how they react, and that it wasn't by the book. It was you do what you have to do to survive. And there were lots of changes that took place from that, and that was part of the whole subcommittee being put together to follow up on those and to work with each school, and because every school's different, every situation's different. So, but the main thing for all of the teachers that I recall was giving them the ability to make the decisions on their own, right? And Chief O'Loughlin was great about, don't ever hesitate to use that phone to call. They'd much rather react and have it be a false alarm than not be called. And so there were tons of changes that were made at each school that came as a result of that training, so. And that's what the subcommittee still does, is meets with the principals and the secretaries to keep hearing more and more ideas and changes
Right.
but we did make some changes to the policies.
I
on
guess
that.
I would wonder if any of that's been shared with kids and, what the training looks like in the schools. And is it refreshed every year when you have new staff coming in? Does everyone understand what the Milford protocol is, what the choices are? Even though I get that every situation is different, but is that something that's refreshed all the time? And are kids aware, and if they have that training, that there may be a time where you're not gonna go and hide in a corner with the lights out, because that may not be the right thing to do, so.
And
think we just need
believe
a
in the
topic
beginning
to
of the year,
revisit.
they do an exercise, right, Bob? And I
Yeah.
also believe that in each classroom, there's a booklet, a guide that they can go by.
Dots and-
But I do recall, we did talk about,
Yeah, and
even
when I-
things like substitute teachers, are they brought through and
Right.
made aware of those types of things?
I'll follow up with the principals on that and make sure that we're doing that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Anybody else?
No, it's great. I'm glad to hear that there's a focus on the mental wellness and the drug and alcohol awareness. So is that going to fall under the Safety and Security Committee or the wellness?
I'm seeing it more as a health and wellness, because we have,
Okay.
so we don't have to meet just to meet. We can shift that, because we have the resources better aligned at the health and wellness table. But the safety and security should still meet at least quarterly to touch base on what's happening in the schools and how we can make those improvements. What will be beneficial is, now that you have your own designated school, is check in with that school about,
Right.
tell me how your lobby guard is working or not working, show me your process, and then everyone comes to the table with this really keen understanding of how it works, we can see maybe where the gaps are. So I think that will really work well.
Yeah. I think one thing that Donnie and I talked about when we first set up this subcommittee, and it came up again in our first meeting, Bob, is when you get everybody in a room together and everybody starts communicating, the next thing you know, was one school came and said, oh, my lobby guide hasn't worked since, and,
Right.
or practical purposes, Bob being the boss, he's sitting there saying, why aren't you communicating with me,
Yeah.
So that if anything, it opens up lines of communication, and we've said this from the beginning, and that's how we find these things out. So I agree with you.
On the wellness piece, I thought the greatest thing that came out of that Chris Herron production was at the end, the guidance counselors, there were lines out the door. And anything we can do to get these kids to open up and talk about their problems, it's a tremendous asset. So I'm happy to hear that we're going to continue and even increase the focus on that this year.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Policy Subcommittee update?
In the packet is a summary of the different policies that we've reviewed to date. Our last meeting was prior to the last school committee meeting, where we presented the two policies. Our next meeting isn't scheduled until, I believe, the end of October. So we should have some more updates after that.
Any member have questions? All right, and with that, we move on to agenda item number 8, new business. Any member have?
I don't really have any new business. I'm not sure if it's new business or not, but I just wanted to touch on what the parents I talked about earlier today. When you guys do these forums, I'd love to be a part of that, because a lot of parents called me or emailed me. And not to say that I got overwhelmed by it, but being a new member, I felt a personal responsibility to help these parents.
Sure.
So with that, I'd love to be with them with that. I'd love to be helping out with that as much as possible. Number 2, I did get a few other emails from parents through Shining Star. This day and age, everyone's trying to recycle, everything's put in containers. The parents that I talked to said that they have to bring paper bags all the time, for 2 snacks, morning snack and afternoon snack. I haven't seen a brown paper bag since my kid went to school. We used plastic reusable ones. They were told that they had to use the paper ones. I checked the handbooks. I didn't see anything in there saying that they had to or couldn't. I wonder if that's just something we can look into real
Sure.
quick. I mean, everyone's trying to
I'll follow up.
recycle these days and not use paper. I mean, plus it's cheaper just to use the plastic ones as well. So.
And there has to use that twice, 2 different bags?
Yeah, so you got a paper bag for morning snack labeled AM or morning, and then you got one for afternoon snack. And, it adds up,
Sure.
all the
I'll
kids,
check into
20
that.
kids in class.
I'll check into that first thing
I
tomorrow.
mean, it's not major, but I mean, some parents just
Yeah.
don't
Sure.
believe
Yeah,
in
no.
that stuff. I mean, like I said, I haven't seen a brown bag in 3 years.
I'll check into that.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Any other member new business?
Yeah,
Bill?
at a future meeting, Bob, could we have, is it Paul Blivis, is the last name pronounced Blivis, the new IT director? Would it
Yes.
be possible to have him come in and give us an update? He's been in the job now for a couple of months, and
Yeah, I know. I was working with town administrator on lining up when he presents to the. Did he present already to the selectmen yet? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
Okay, we were trying to line it up so he presented to the selectmen and also the school committee. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll arrange that as at a future agenda. Sure.
Okay. Agenda item number 9, old business. Any member have old business?
I have a question, Andrew, unless
Sure.
Oh, okay.
you can say something. I just had a question in terms of, Bob, your evaluation and where we stand with that. I know that we were asked to present our write-ups by August 30th, and now we're approaching the end of September. I had thought that it was on tonight's agenda, but I might have misunderstood something, but I would hate for us to hold up our superintendent's evaluation and the helpful feedback and his ability to produce his new goals for this year, and making sure salary and all those pieces are in place now that the school year. So I'd appreciate knowing, and I know that you're taking Scott's place tonight.
But I do believe it's on the next agenda,
Okay.
correct?
It is.
Yeah, it's on the next agenda.
I'm not sure if all the.
Comment on that too,
Yeah.
'cause I sent it to Scott, cause I thought it was odd that this year, the packet that we received, it was just, meets, needs improvement, whatever. And, it didn't have like the comments, piece to it.
Mine did,
That's the
It
same
did.
form we've been using.
yeah. Mine
Cause
did.
I sent them the 2012 one that I had, where it had all those, and I said, why is this different?
Well, that was a mistake. I had a
Yeah,
full.
I think he's talking about, because that happened to me too, so I reached out to Melissa. Melissa had resent it to me. So I think you're talking about the goals
Yeah.
piece that listed out all the accomplishments for the year. And originally, the email I got was missing that piece.
Oh.
as
I mean, I
well.
was happy that all I had to do was
So-
check off 5 boxes. And I know Bob's
No,
dying
you-
to hear, my
I know you wanted-
added, comments, but I was crushed. I'm like, is this, Bob's
I was
way
with
to
you. Draw in
silencing
your own
me or
comment
something,
section.
you know?
Yeah.
But-
No, that's, I can talk to Melissa about that. It's a mistake.
All right.
I'm not sure what it's the same form we've used actually the last 3 years now, so
No, it's the same.
we'll find out what that
So
is.
the answer to your
I'd sent
question,
it to
Jenny, is on the
Scott,
next
and
It's
I
on the
asked
next
him for,
Yeah.
if I was missing something, but I didn't hear back, so.
And just at risk of thinking that I'm not doing anything in Milford until I get my goals approved.
I didn't mean to imply that, Dr. Tremblay.
No, not at all. I'm pulling from the strategic plan those items that are targeted for the first year of that plan, and pulling from there as the focus for the goals. And so I don't foresee there being any issues with the committee on that. As far as my own professional practice goals, I'm waiting on that feedback so I can frame that, so. But thank you. Yeah, that was on the next agenda, yes. And Mr. Chairman, I did have one piece of old business, you.
Oh, you go ahead, Al.
I just wanted to announce we had our first middle school soccer game yesterday. I was not able to attend the game, but Nick reported back to me. So it's Milford, we played it against Ashland here at Pheno Field. Did anyone go to the game? I don't know.
No.
We lost. Both teams lost, but that's okay. It was our first game, and the kids had a great time, and they had uniforms, and they're psyched. So
Awesome.
it's great. We're off and running, and we had our first game, so I'll try to catch.
It-
I think
when
it's about
was the
5
game?
games. It was at Pheno Field. The
It
games
wa-
are all at Pheno. It was yesterday.
Oh, yes,
I think it was yesterday around 5 o'clock or so. And yeah, so I'll let you know when future games come up. And
Yeah, definitely.
it'd be great to catch one. So I wanted to just announce that.
That's great.
Joe?
And then just a reminder, we have our first MESC workshop next Thursday
Next
at
Thursday.
7 o'clock. So Dorothy Presser's going to be out providing us with a presentation.
That'll be non-televised, just kind of a public meeting, but still a working meeting.
Correct.
Okay, so it'll be
Yeah.
non-televised.
Okay, and with that, can I have an emotion for adjournment, seeing there's no executive session?
So motioned.
Patrick? Joe?
Yep.
All in favor? Meeting adjourned.